Hello, teacher and classmates. Today we're going to talk about two different strategies for literature in classrooms. We are Paula Estudillo, Ignacio Perez, and Kateri Torres. Today we're going to talk about multiple perspectives first, and then we're going to deal with performance reading. So the first speaker is going to be Ignacio Perez.
Hello, everyone. First, we're going to start with multiple perspectives. This is a strategy that encourages students to think about multiple perspectives on what really happened in history, because as we already know, there can be different points of view on controversial issues or beliefs about people, events, and movements. Now, while students consider the differences between the perspectives, they also learn to analyze, compare and contrast, interpret, and generalize. They can also learn to identify the reliability of the source of information, whether primary or secondary. Now, how can we use this strategy with literature? It can be used to introduce a social study concept or issue with conflicting views. One book can present more than one perspective, as the adoption papers by Jackie Kay, or it might present a not commonly known or accept perspective, as in The Hanging by George Orwell. Now, even if this approach is more focused on historical perspectives, we can also use it with non-historical books, such as Frankenstein, for example. They could use their prior knowledge on the monster and contrast it with the perspective of the monster that is shown in the book. A way in which students can present what they have learned about multiple perspectives could be data charts, debates, curriculum drama, and readers' theater. English learners. For English learners, we have the Jigsaw Cooperative Learning Strategy. What is it? The idea of this is that students in small groups can work on different pieces of a problem or puzzle. Each one should cover a piece of the puzzle to solve. Students can work together towards a common goal while they have individual responsibilities within a group to achieve the goal. Each piece will correspond to a different perspective on the same problem. How can it help students? This activity helps learners through student-to-student interaction. Also, English learners that have issues producing responses in front of the whole class can benefit from this setting through the increased interaction between peers in small groups and the personalized feedback of the teacher. Something really useful for using this method is to relate to personal experiences and prior knowledge. Now, for struggling students, it's recommended to prepare frames that can assist them, or a word bank can be included with a chart for each student with words that they are going to need to complete it. For example, the names of historical figures or locations that they will need. The Jigsaw Cooperative Learning activity in an inclusive classroom will ensure that struggling students or students with special needs will interact and learn alongside their more advanced peers.
Well, now I'm going to talk about the suggested assessment for this strategy. And we can say that the text states that authentic assessment could take place with you as a participant or as an observer in the small groups of the classroom, noting the level of participation of each student. Now, taking this into account, we suggest using the Jigsaw Cooperative Learning Strategy we saw earlier on a history lesson. A way to do it, for example, is to take a reading with an historical context like Marx's Communist Manifesto, and the teacher will give the students the instruction to reorder the book events from a series of sentences randomly written, with the aim of understanding one side of the story regarding the Cold War, as in this case. So right here we have the example of the activity. It says to organize the events of the reading in their correct sequence. And the correct order for this would be number 3, number 1, number 4, and number 2. Now Paula is going to talk us about performance reading.
So, performance reading. also called fluent oral reading. And as the name claims, it involves performance, expression, and interpretation. Fluent oral reading has three major aspects. Accuracy, that is related to the way the reading is performed. It should be presented without errors, for example, in pronunciation. Second, automaticity, refers to reading the words in a text correctly and effortlessly. Fluency when reading becomes a very important issue. When a text is not rehearsed, the listeners notice the difference. And third, prosody, means reading with an appropriate expression and phrasing to reflect the meaning of a passage. Complementing these three aspects contribute not only to engagement in and enjoyment of reading for students, but to reading comprehension. The success of this strategy depends greatly on the age range that we as teachers want to focus on. The areas of interest of the students vary, and the attitude is important to engage students, but it's possible to do it with the same strategy for different grades. A suggestion for engagement could be acting out and asking for the favorite part, for example, or using gestures, sound effects, voices, or reflective questions for elder students. On the other side, it is also important that teachers consider the different types of text. For younger learners, it is perfectly fine using short stories or poems with repetitive sounds. Whether with older ones can include deeper issues inside of a text. For example, there's a rubric in the text that suggests some criteria for kindergarten students to second graders. This rubric deals with items related to language, but more specifically, the way words are repeated for the use of refrains, or the use of the refrain. The different tones can bring to life the characters and the reading. The same with gestures, sounds, effects, or props that truly make a text more enjoyable. Older students can perform readings of a text that feature monologues, dialogues, even songs. For example, the song by A Day to Remember, that is called If It Means a Lot of You, that involves two people discussing and can be perfectly performed. Now, Katari is going to mention the suggested assessment.
Yes, well, the suggested assessment for this strategy would be according to the text, to co-create a rubric for performance reading with students that can both guide and assess a student's ability. To use repeated phrases and language, character voices, gestures, sound effects, props, as appropriate for each story or poem used. As it is dependent on the age of the learners, younger students can discuss their performance reading with others, first noting their strengths and then making suggestions for things on which they can improve. On the other hand, older students can do peer assessment with another classmate, noting their strengths and then areas of improvement. Now, using this information, find here an example of a rubric which can be used for performance reading on secondary school students based on the novel Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. As any other rubric, if students comply with the entirety of the criteria, they will get full points, and they go down if they're lacking in certain aspects. Now we're going to give you an example. Paula, can you please read the last dialogue of Juliet in the novel?
Of course. Yeah. Noise? Then I'll be brief. Oh, happy dagger, this is thy shield, the rust, and let me die.
Excellent, thank you very much. Now, as you can see, in terms of language, she stated the dialogues appropriately. There are no omissions or errors present in her reading. In terms of preparation, we're going to pretend that she came in full costume, that she used a dress, that she used maybe a wig, and she had full makeup on, and we're going to give her also 3 points for that. And in performance, she used gestures, she changed her voice and the elements of the character to portray herself very successfully. So in this case, she would have full points. Now, thank you very much for seeing our presentation, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.